Hello and welcome to CANNAMAntv. My name is Connor McLeod, and in this informative interview, I speak with CEO of Medicann, Gary Whipp. In this interview, we discuss Gary's background and what led him into the cannabis space, what is Medicann and how patients and doctors can get involved, the UK medical cannabis landscape, the endocannabinoid system DNA test, challenges with opening medical cannabis clinics, cannabinoid medicine, and what to expect from Medicann in the future. Make sure to like and subscribe, and join me on Patreon and PayPal to help to build a stronger cannabis media platform. Now then, let's talk cannabis. Well, let's say, Gary, thank you so much for coming on the channel.
It's kind of you to invite me.
So, for people that are unaware of who you are, could you give essentially a background on yourself and what led you to start Medicann, essentially?
So I've been in and around medical cannabis for about 5 years. Medicann has been going for 3 years, and we opened our first clinic in Jersey in the Channel Islands. We only really deal with the islands, so it's Jersey, Guernsey, Isle of Man. We don't deal with the UK, and we've now decided to open in Ireland.
Excellent. So, I mean, why do you not deal in the UK?
To be honest with you, it's a big place. There's lots of people doing it, and one of the main reasons is that recreational cannabis is extremely cheap in the UK. The laws are quite lenient for being caught with medicinal cannabis, whereas the cost of cannabis in the islands is extremely expensive, and the laws are very draconian. So it's actually more viable for people to go onto medicinal cannabis in the islands than it is in the UK. You still have a lot of people who in the UK are self-medicating.
Right. So where exactly in Ireland is the clinic going to be situated?
So we'll operate all over Ireland. We will have a clinic in I don't know if you know, the Hermitage Clinic in Old Lucan Road.
Right.
So it's D20W722, if I remember rightly. And so that will be a base, but the vast majority of our patients will be seen via a secure video link.
Excellent. So could you essentially walk through the process if you're somebody living in Ireland and are hoping to acquire medicine through you guys?
Yeah. So the first thing is to obviously go on a website and to register the fact that you're interested. At that stage, our team will then email you, say, look, thanks for your interest. Here's a questionnaire. The questionnaire really is sort of a pre-qualifying questionnaire so that you're not wasting your own time. It'll ask you, what's the condition you're looking to be treated for? How long have you had it? What conventional therapies have you tried? Those kind of questions. Have you been referred to a specialist? Now, if the answer to all those questions, it means that our people think you will qualify, then they'll ask you to give permission to access your medical records. One of our senior consultants will then access your medical records with your permission, get that off either your GP or you can send it directly to them. They'll look to see if that coincides with what you've told them about your condition and that you will probably qualify. And if that's the case, they'll invite you to come for a consultation. At that consultation, the guys will talk to you about alternative medications, what you've been doing, what you've not been doing. They'll look for any contraindications in you and your condition. And they'll then look at, if they feel that you are eligible, how to prescribe and what would be best to prescribe for you. Once they've done that, we don't just stop there. We have what's called an MDT meeting, which is a multidisciplinary team meeting. And that's, take me as an example, then we're not talking about patients. If I was looking to be prescribed, it would be a pain doctor and 2 pain specialists. The pain specialists interview the doctor. They ask him about the condition. It's all done anonymously. He says, look, good looking guy, age 50, played rugby for the Isle of Man. He's done this to his back. He's tried this medication, that medication. He's tried, baclofen, gabapentin, whatever it may be. And he's been under the specialist. He's had interfacet injections in his spine. They say, well, do you think he qualifies? Doctor will go, yes, I'm pretty sure he qualifies. They say, right, we agree. What are you thinking of prescribing? well, I'm thinking of prescribing this, this, and this, or this. The specialists then, because they've had a bit more experience than most of the doctors, say, actually, had you considered this? And that way they end up with a prescription that's right for you, or hopefully right for you. Sometimes it can take 2 or 3 prescriptions to get the right medication for you. Once that's done, then the prescription's written. And there's 2 ways of accessing in Ireland. One is MCAP, which is the Medical Cannabis Access Program. If you qualify for that, you'll get a rebate on your costs, but that's only for 3 real conditions: MS, nausea caused by cancer, and epilepsy. Then the other conditions, which are mostly what we prescribe for, pain and different conditions on that, would be payable by the patient with no rebate from the government. And that's issued under what's called a ministerial license, where we guide you through the process of applying for the license. We do all the paperwork for you, and once that license is in place, then you're good for 12 months.
Excellent. So, I mean, what is the range of medicines that you have available, and is it specific to the condition that's they're coming through as well?
So my specialists know what the best medication is for specific conditions, but everybody's endocannabinoid system is slightly different. So what may work for me for sleep may not work for somebody else. What may work for me for pain may be different for somebody else. We can prescribe under the ministerial license any medication that has been prescribed in Europe. So examples would be, I could not prescribe the latest medication that's being prescribed on the islands, which is a locally grown product. That's not being prescribed in Europe. Therefore, under the ministerial license, we couldn't prescribe that in Ireland. MCAP is slightly different. It's only products that are listed on the website under the whitelist, and we're trying to add products to that, but it goes through testing, etc., and takes time. So MCAP is specific to what's on the list. Ministerial license is any medication that's been prescribed in Europe before.
Right. What kind of, obviously you've got the 2 other clinics in Guernsey and Jersey as well, is that right?
Yeah, Jersey, Guernsey, and the Isle of Man.
Yeah, so I mean, from those 3 clinics, what's been consistent difficulties that you've found that you'll be able to kind of neutralise with the clinic in Dublin?
Each island is slightly different. So Jersey was the first island. Obviously, we had a learning curve to go through there. When we then opened and COVID gave us a 12-month gap, when we opened in Guernsey, it was slightly different because their licenses they issued to the pharmacies were slightly different. So it took about 3 or 4 months to get everything lined up. In the end, Guernsey then decided they would actually use the same license as Jersey. In the Isle of Man, as an example, they're running currently a trial. So they're testing things. Not us. We know what works. We know what we're prescribing. We know what we're doing. But the government, it's new to them. So they're doing a trial. They've done that. They're just about to make it what they call business as usual in the new year. Ireland, I think, is slightly ahead of everywhere because they are rebating, albeit not many doctors are prescribing on the MCAP program, and you have a lot of people that do qualify for the MCAP program. The fact is the government are willing to give you something back. Whereas in any of the other jurisdictions, we can't even get £20 for a prescription, which we would get normally if we were writing any prescription for any product. It just doesn't exist. There's no rebate. So the patient is paying for everything, and it's not a cheap product. But the results are amazing.
So locally grown stuff, is that going to be a focus for medicine in the future when it's available?
Listen, the best products, if you're looking at, saving the planet, etc., have got to be locally grown products. But it takes a while to get EU GMP. And the only thing that we can supply, which is a medication, all has to be EU GMP. So for the last 2 years, lots of people in England have been trying to grow products. None of them have got anything on the market. The first one that came to market actually came from Jersey, albeit it's been produced and now coming through, goes from Jersey to the UK and back again, unfortunately. But that's because of getting the EU GMP process.
Mm-hmm. So what is going to be the first stages then in January when you begin to open?
So the first stage is apply, get you on the list, because there's a lot of people applying. Let's get the questionnaire filled in. Let's see if we believe you're eligible. Let's get access to your notes so that we can check that you are eligible, get you in for an appointment. Once that appointment's done, we can start either the MCAP or the ministerial license application.
Right. I watched your interview with Stephen Garland, and I remember on the interview you mentioned a DNA test to essentially isolate your endocannabinoid system. Could you talk through a little bit of
that? I can. It's in its very early stages, but we've worked with a company in the US, and they have developed a DNA test that basically looks at the best cannabinoids for your own personal endocannabinoid system. Looks at the best terpenes that'll work, anything that may have a reaction you may have a reaction to. It will then help you to select with your doctor the best medication. Now, with MCAP, there isn't that many on there yet, so even the DNA test will be restricted as to what it will tell you is working. But as more products come on, then the more the test can look at what would potentially be the best medication for your particular condition and your system.
Right. That's really exciting because it kind of shows you where the technology's at.
Yeah, I mean it's game changing. I mean, I just did a program for Netflix. One of the patients was talking about how he went through this journey, didn't want to be illegal, didn't want to do anything wrong, went out to Spain, didn't work for him, came back to the UK, was living in Jersey, came into one of the Medicann clinics. It didn't really work for him the first time when he saw the doctor. It was a little bit of change. Doctor changed his prescription. It worked a little bit better. But on the third month, it was almost perfect. And he hadn't had a fit for, we'd had something like 320 fits a year. And when I did the filming was in June, it had been 12 months and he'd had 3 fits. So, in 12 months, 3 fits compared to 360, whatever, almost a fit every day, sometimes 2, 3 a day.
Yeah.
So again, that took 3 months to get him to a place where the medication was the right one. Hopefully with the DNA testing, you'd get there straight away.
It's fascinating because, I mean, what do you have essentially a foundational archive that you're going to be referencing in order to make sure that you can kind of accurately judge this per patient?
I'm not the DNA expert, but I can get you one. But these guys, have a database of the different medications and what the terpene profiles are, what the cannabinoids are in that profile, because as lots of medications vary in what the amount of THC, the amount of CBD is one complicated product. But then you look at terpene profiles, you look at the different indicas, whether it's an indica, whether it's a sativa, whether it's a hybrid. And the beautiful thing about what they do is they put all the information from all the different medications in, and then it compares it with the results from the DNA test. And, as I said, it's very early stages. I mean, I think we submitted about 10 of these DNA tests. So, come back to me in 6 months and ask me again, and let's see what's really come of it.
That sounds exciting. I mean, you mentioned your Netflix filming a minute ago there. Is that something that people can see at some point soon?
I'm told it should be on any month now. It's called High Science, and it's something that we filmed with them. They were supposed to go to 3 clinics. They ended up spending 3 days with us. So we're watching this space, to find out when it's on.
Yeah, that's clearly a compliment to your team that they didn't want to go anywhere else.
Yeah, either that or they were all very happy.
Yeah,
maybe they all went on the lash. Who knows?
Getting fed and watered well.
Yeah.
No, that's promising. So obviously, when it comes to the clinics, there's been numerous criticisms with the other clinics that are present. One of the ones is with the medicine that comes through. Often there's mold present. Often there's residual pesticides, low quality buds, shake. Essentially, I mean, how are these things going to be mediated, essentially, or like completely avoided with you guys?
So, I mean, there are hundreds of medications that you can choose from. We only work with the biggest and the best, or We look at different quality control systems. We go out to a lot of the places that are growing the products, and we inspect the facilities ourselves. I mean, yes, there was a lot of issues. There was, I think, about 4 recalls from the MHRA and the Home Office, but touch wood, we've never had one. And yes, you do get some products that are slightly drier, but they're all EU GMP. And at the end of the day, if the product isn't good, then the pharmacy replace it and they destroy it. So, that has happened. We've had people who come and said, look, I'm not happy with this. It's quite dry, blah, blah, blah. The pharmacy change it out and we destroy it.
One of the most recent, I think, criticisms in the context of this is the irradiated cannabis and how the impact that has on the phytochemical profile and then the quality of the medicine. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
So, I mean, it depends who you're speaking to.
Yeah.
So the people who sell irradiated products say that it's much better if it's irradiated. The people who sell non-irradiated products say, do you know what? You should really go for non-irradiated. I think if you were asking for personal opinion, if you were asking me, do I want an organic product or do I want a product that's been used and had this pesticide on it and this pesticide on it and been treated and microwaved, I'd probably want organic. But when you go for a non-irradiated product, you have to understand what it is. It's a product that has been taken straight from growing and packaged. So it's not irradiated. It's not been, microwaved to kill off anything that's on there. It's not been put through a process that will make it last, a year, 2 years. So a good quality non-irradiated product, in my opinion, but it is only my opinion, is the best. The terpene profile is fully intact. It's the bud as it came from the plant.
Yeah.
But I do have people who say they only want irradiated. They want 12 and 18 months lifespan on it, blah, blah, blah. But your medication is only prescribed for 28 days. So why anyone would want, a year or 2 years of life, bewilders me.
That's actually a great point. The fact it's your prescription's only got a minimum lifespan in comparison to an irradiated 18-month. Because I think in the cannabis community, it's almost stereotypical that they're kind of looking through a natural lens, so it's almost hand in hand with it. And I think that's maybe one of the criticisms of the fact that people have been waiting so long. They're now in a position where they can't really get it on the same basis. I mean, they've got people that's obviously in prison at the same time as medical can be distributed and that kind of thing. So it's a really unusual period of time that's going on at the moment, in the context of cannabis.
Yeah. And you look at the US where they're now releasing prisoners for cannabis-related crimes, which, we may get there, but it's going to take us a while.
I think that's maybe where the bittersweet comes in, because we're in a, it's that the model that's been given is one that hasn't really complemented the community in a way. It's more like it's a business dynamic, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the more people who there are 2 types of patient. I call them naive and non-naive. And that's not meant to insult anybody. It's meant that your naive patient is my dad. Unfortunately, he's been dead a while, but he never had cannabis in his life. So if he came to one of my doctors, he would be what they would call a naive patient. They'd start him low, they'd go very slow, and they'd bring him through the process. The non-naive patients are the patients who've got pain, they've got PTSD, they've got whatever they've got, and they've been self-medicating with it, or they've been using cannabis. Now, if they're honest with their doctor and they go through that, that gives the doctor some information to work with. And he doesn't go, well, actually, where you need to start is down at the bottom and start working your way up, because their endocannabinoid system is fired up. They're used to having cannabis, and they probably know as much, if not more, than the doctor about particular strains. Now, the doctor's only looking at medication, but they may know different strains that they have used historically. And there may be a medical equivalent of that. So the more open and honest you are, and it's very difficult for people, I understand that, to be open and honest, but these doctors are there purely to treat people in a medical condition. So, whatever they talk about to the doctor is between them and the doctor. the more open and honest they are, the more the chance there is of them starting off that journey a little bit further along. So it's all about working with your doctor.
So for people that are, I mean, I'd be surprised if there's anybody watching this that was completely naive, but for people that are like new to clinics, new to that kind of medicine as a whole, what would you recommend?
Go in, obviously go through the process. Look, don't cost yourself any money. Let's get you recommended. Let's get you on the send the information to you, go through the questionnaire. Then let's look at the medical records. And only then, once we've done that and we're doing all that for free, when the guys think this patient should qualify, then we'll bring you in for a consultation. And take it from there and talk openly. You know, I've got people now who had never wanted cannabis because there was no way of them taking it. Mainly slightly older people, so like my age, not your age, and they want lozenges, you know, or capsules, and these are all becoming more and more available now. You know, so the sooner we get away from everybody thinking that cannabis is a recreational drug, which we all know it is, but that there is a form of cannabis not too dissimilar from that recreational drug that is a medication, and people start looking at it as a medication, then the sooner we start to change perception.
Yeah, I feel I agree. It's interestingly actually because there is that ongoing dynamic in the cannabis world when they say all cannabis consumption is medical. And I think one of the things I've always had a bit of a criticism with that, because personally I don't believe that. I believe because you can have, there's so many different variables involved that you consuming cannabis can have a positive effect towards inflammation, but have a negative effect towards metabolic enzyme, you know, production or something like that, you know. And I think it's quite interesting that that's, you know, it's almost spilled over onto the physical representation culturally, you know, that conversation.
And unless you're physically, and I'm not recommending this or advocating it, but unless you're physically growing the cannabis and you know what it is and how it's been grown and what's happened to it since it was grown, you know, there are a lot of influencing factors when people are buying street cannabis. You know, it's not necessarily the same product every time. It's not necessarily being kept in the right conditions all the time. Whereas at least with an EU GMP product, it's grown to a specific product every single time. It will vary. Every single crop varies by a little bit. So the same strain may be a 25 THC one week and a 24 the next, or a 23 or a 27. But it's all within the regime of growing under regulation.
It's interesting that as well, because one of the things I think towards general legalization is the fact that gardening has been known to be a positive influence in your mental health. So cultivating your own cannabis has a positive impact on something that stereotypically cannabis was negative towards, you know?
I'm not sure we can get that through, but yeah.
You'll be fine, Gary, you'll manage, man. But yeah, no, it's an interesting time. So I mean, like in the future then, so what are you expecting in the next 6 months? What's it going to be looking like?
I think in the next 6 months, one of my biggest challenges is recruiting and training local doctors. So, you know, medical cannabis has been around in Ireland for a while. There's not that many people prescribing it. And it's about us educating the doctors. My best advocates are doctors who say, I'll never touch cannabis. I don't want to go anywhere near it. It's not working. I wouldn't be anywhere near it. I'm not having anything to do with it. My insurance won't cover me, my blah, blah, blah. So we have full insurance for all our doctors. They're insured up to £10 million. But what the main thing is, when a doctor who's been that reactive to cannabis, he's never sees a patient and he sees it change that patient's life. This isn't a miracle cure. You know, if you get rid of all the BS, it doesn't cure cancer, it doesn't blah, 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 but it does change people's lives. And when the doctor actually sees a patient that he's been trying to treat for sleep or for pain for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, when he sees that patient go back to work, and when he sees the change in that patient's life, he becomes a believer. And then he becomes a really great advocate for us, because he was the worst one. He was the man who wouldn't let anybody near it and wasn't interested. Patient's gone private, but we inform the doctor, the GP, and we tell him what he's on and what he's been doing. And when this film comes out, and I'll get this wrong, it's COPD. It's a lung infection. One of the guys that was on the program had really, really bad problems, like life-threatening problems. And after 8 months, his lung capacity is better than his doctor's. And the doctor went, "Well, what have you been doing?" And he went, "I've been doing medical cannabis." And this is when you see it, I couldn't have paid actors to say what these people said, because it's real life. Your actors would have messed it up. These people were so convinced that medical cannabis had changed their lives. It was untrue.
It's
And
interesting.
then we're randomly picked out by the film crew from patient 100, patient 157, 199. And then we rang the patient, said, "Look, you said you were interested. Would you mind if the film crew came around?" And so we filmed them.
That's very cool. I'm looking forward to watching that. It's funny you
Yeah.
talk about COPD as well, because I wrote a book a few years back called A Case for Cannabis, and in that there was a study that I included, and it was about it was essentially a case study of about 20 or 30 Jamaican women who were pregnant, and then what they did was they then followed them and their children over the next I think 30 or 40 years, and what they found was lung capacity when they did the lung test was like well above average for lung capacity, and they were like chronic cannabis consumers. Not only that, they smoked cannabis, and I think this is one of the main things that one of the main issues that people have with medical cannabis is that if you vape it, it's legal. If you smoke it, it's illegal, and it's like that needs to change.
Your problem is that, and look, I mean, I've got friends who, tell me lots of different things about cannabis, and I've got to try and convince them that medical cannabis is the way to go. The problem is, if you smoke it, a lot of people mix it with tobacco.
Yeah.
Now, no matter how we look at tobacco, it's addictive. It's not great for you.
Mm.
So the minute you mix it with tobacco, you can get an addictive issue. The second problem you have is that when you put it in a Rizzler and you light it up, it might be fantastic, but you're not burning the product at a consistent temperature.
Mm.
So therefore, you tend to burn off certain things. You might get a higher high from it, but not have the medical benefits that you would if you use a vaporizer. So if you vape cannabis, it's legal. If you smoke it, it's illegal. And do you know what? I don't advocate a change for that, because I've seen the difference in how it affects people. If you vape it at a certain temperature, the THC is lower intake, the terpenes stay intact, and it has a more medical effect, as opposed to having a spliff and having a little sleep or going and having some extra food. It's just the way it is, and we have to explain that to every patient. Look, you may have been used to having a spliff. You cannot now, because there is no justification being on medical cannabis and turning it into a recreational drug. And that's just life, and we have to get used to it. But if you have vaped and you get a decent vape, I'm sure you'll find that it's still worthwhile.
It's certainly worthwhile. I went to Amsterdam once. It was like a fast food approach. I was there like 3 days, and that was the very first time I tried a vape, and it was a totally different sensation. And interestingly, I think that's what I'm hoping in the next maybe decade or so, that cannabis won't be consumed with tobacco whatsoever, because that actually came around in the UK, Europe, predominantly because of like hash. There wasn't any grass. There wasn't any actually flower material until the early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, I spent about 5 years in Holland working, and I've still got many friends in Holland, so I'm familiar. We were one of the companies that were invited to tender for the Dutch, where they were. I don't know if you know, but it's legal to sell cannabis in the coffee shops, but the cannabis that gets there is got there illegally.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the Dutch government started this tender. We pulled out of it, but it was interesting, and they're now going ahead and they're going to produce product that will go to the coffee shops, but who knows?
It's actually, and I've got a really surface level understanding of what's happening in Holland at the moment. I read an article, I think, when it was that they're going to be selling legal and illegal next to each other. I mean, how is that going to work?
I have no idea. My Dutch stops at goedemiddag and dankjewel.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Dutch, they speak fluent English. Yeah, I don't claim to know what they're doing. I just know that they are trying to make a legal grow in Holland that can then supply to coffee shops, which be great for them because they'll get tax out of that as well. I mean, you look at the US and you look at cannabis vacations, and there's lots of reasons why cannabis potentially should be legal. And lots of advocacy for that. At the moment, we have medicinal cannabis. It is legal, and it's working for patients. I mean, we've 6,500 patients who are all using medicinal cannabis and reaping the benefits.
It's definitely needed, 100%. Like clinics and any form of normalization is necessary. Frustratingly, I think sometimes one of the side effects of having only a clinic-based way of accessing cannabis, you have a lot of people that will be going in under false pretenses where they won't be legitimately needing it medically. It would just be essentially that they've tailored their condition to, oh, I kind of, one of those things.
I think, we do see that. And that's why the criteria is so strict. They have to have access to medical records. They have to check you're under a GP. They have to check that you've tried traditional medication, and don't get me wrong. I am sure that there are people who are recreational users who are now using medicinal cannabis. But what I do guarantee is that they do have a medical condition that qualifies them for it. Certainly if they've gone through one of our clinics.
So just essentially, we've almost covered everything, Gary, but just before we go, so in the past few years then, for Medicann as a business since 2018, how's, if anything, the business model changed since in the past few years?
I think it's changed in the price of the products has reduced. When we first started, the average was 12 to 14 pounds per gram. We now have products that are coming in at 6-7 pounds. So the price has changed. The actual products have changed. There's more and more coming on the market that are EU GMP, so there is more choice for the doctors. I think one of the things that patients have to remember is that it's not Amazon. Mm-hmm. So, these doctors have been trained to prescribe, and they will only prescribe a product that they're familiar with. So if you come and you go, I've got Jolly Green Giant, whatever, and that's the stuff I need. If that doctor isn't familiar with it, he will go away and research it, and he may or may not prescribe it. But, these doctors know what they're doing. They're familiar with the different products, and they know what does and doesn't work. So once you start going through that and you get more and more products becoming made available, we then do test cases with, let's say, 100 patients. We try those 100 patients on a new product, and if that product works really well, then we'll then start moving patients to that product. So lots of things change. Our own adaptation of how we work and the way we do most things electronically. Even e-prescriptions are now coming, where the government have now accepted or are about to hopefully accept e-prescriptions, because prior to that, a private prescription is a piece of paper. It's got to have a wet signature on it. It's a certain form. It's a certain color depending on the jurisdiction. You're in a green form or a blue form, and it's it's quite complex. But we work with all that in every jurisdiction, and things move on. There is less stigma now than there was when I first started. Everybody went, cannabis? What? So yeah, lots of things have changed and will change.
So for doctors that want to become active with Medicann, what would you say? How would they approach that?
Give us a call. We will come and we'll go through a training session with you. We'll talk to you. We'll answer questions. We historically gone to GP surgeries and met with everybody, depending on the day. We've gone out for dinner. We've chatted with them. We've done presentations, whatever works for them. If you've got a GP who wants to prescribe, but he knows that the other GPs in his surgery are not into it in any way, give us a call, send us a private email, and we'll meet you individually and talk to you about it. Everybody that prescribes has to go on a prescriber's course. That's run by a friend of mine, Professor Mike Barnes. And if you Google Mike, he is the go-to medicinal cannabis man. And Mike does all my training courses. And I tend to do a lot of after training with doctors, because I know a little bit about the products that are coming in, and I've been out and sourced them and looked at them and seen how they're grown. And that all helps the doctors. I often take doctors out to see the grows.
You just talking on products. Actually, we've got an issue with CBD and novel foods, and that's been an ongoing thing for the past 2 years. Do you have anything equivalent, like about bringing in products from international areas?
No, we have no issues with you. We do. That in Ireland we can only bring in a product that's been prescribed in the EU. So I couldn't bring in some of the Australian products, some of the products that are grown in other places, non-EU places. And even if it was grown in an EU place, it may not have been prescribed. So, but that doesn't limit you very much. There are still hundreds of different medications that we have in our arsenal to use that are actually being prescribed in the EU. But we can, in other jurisdictions, we can bring in products from anywhere in the world, providing the EU GMP. So that's just as long as they're grown to a specific standard.
Right. And essentially, lastly, what is your greatest ambition for Medicann?
Do you know what? For me personally, I've done reasonably well in my life. The thing for me is that I like to see the changes in people's lives. That program that we did was a game changer for me. And we do what we do. Don't get me wrong, we've not registered as a charity. We make money, but it is those changes in people's lives and perception that really is inspiring.
Nice one, Gary. Essentially, I've covered everything I was wanting to talk about. Do you have anything you want to add before we go?
No, listen, you know where we are. You can give us a call anytime, ping us an email. When we come over, we'll come and see you. We'll have a beer. Unfortunately, we can't have a spliff, but we can have a beer, and we'll let's keep going. It's through people like you and your TV and you getting it out there that does help. And the more people, if we get one doctor from me talking to you, or we get 10 patients who come and say, my God, that worked for me, then they talk to people and they talk to people, it just snowballs.
Thanks to Gary for giving me his time, and thanks to you for sticking around until the end of the video. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the content. I'll see you next time.